Quarter-century it removed from the United States, Ross had managed to restore the heart of his nation. Its government had been reconstituted. Its businesses flourished. It had the finest system of public education in all America, for men and women. Cherokee population had nearly doubled to 21,000. Ancient tribal traditions, like the green corn dance and the clan system, were still honored. John Ross was in his 70s, had been chief nearly 40 years, when, after the Civil War, the United States began to force its way, once again, into Cherokee territory, demanding the tribe cede part of its western lands. In the summer of 1866, while he was in Washington negotiating anew with the U.S., John Ross fell ill. As he neared death, Ross knew the Cherokee Nation faced big challenges in the coming years and new kinds of encroachments. But the chief took comfort in the fact that the Cherokees had reestablished themselves as a strong and sovereign nation, deeply connected to the land on which they lived, and prepared to fight for it.
In this one respect, they're lucky. In that, where they came to looks kind of like where they left. They look at the hills here and they say, those look like the hills in old Cherokee country. They must have been carved out by the same buzzard that carved out the Smokies. And they look at the scratches in the rock and they say, those look just like the scratches in the rock made by the Uktana back in Georgia. They must have been made by the Uktana here, too. Part Cherokee writer Scott Momaday talks about stories in the blood, or memory in the blood. The stories are told generation after generation, so that in many ways they are carried in our blood. And although I don't know what it was like to make that march, my ancestors did come on the trail. I've heard the stories.
In listening to the stories of your ancestors, you're taught who you are and what your ancestors sacrificed so that you could be Cherokee.
All right, set, lock it up, sound, rolling. Background!
Anytime you attempt to do a historical program prior to the middle of the 19th century, you're in a situation where you have a paucity of images. How you fill them in is really one of the biggest challenges of the whole field of historical documentary filmmaking. In this case, we decided to take a form of dramatic reenactment that we have employed in a number of our films and take it to a new place.
Wes Studi really brought a real quality to the role of Major Ridge. He told me that this was the first time that he'd gotten to play Cherokee, and he's a Cherokee, and he actually got to speak the Cherokee language, his first language.
And action.
Go get your own way. The general public throughout the world think of us as just total victims of these Europeans. Well, you know, this story here deals with our input into the way that things turned out. I mean, we had a huge hand in our historic fate. And I think this particular story and the character that I'm playing, Major Ridge, addresses that.
It was very important to us to include native languages in these films, and so we worked very closely with actors so they could learn Nipmuc and Shawnee and Cherokee.
With this production, when they asked us to be involved and they asked our people to speak their own language, I thought that was probably one of the most important things this production could have done.
You guys know the lines that you have, right? Based upon listening to him say your lines,
These were men who we cast because they speak Cherokee and they are Cherokee elders. They'd never been on a film set before. It was wonderful to watch these old men who'd never acted before really get into it.
Help me, Woody.
We worked incredibly hard over the past 4 years to bring as many Native voices and Native creative talent into this project.
We do a lot of looking you.
Good. Good. Yep, just let it flow.
It's right here.
Yeah.
Some people picked it up, right away, and other ones we had to work with quite a while because some of the actors have their own dialect from, their own tribal nations. And it's difficult because you're using, not only making sounds, but you're using muscles in your mouth to speak a language, whatever language that might be, and some of those muscles you've never used before to speak the language that's from out here.
It's a tough language. It's a very, very beautiful language. It's almost like singing.
Kisikwan, Tarabaramas, Nuwachi, Iyu, Kisikakunigat. Panu Papinama Antamwe, Na Natusan, Na Wache, Ninama Siniwag.
One of the things for me that's very important about the series is the remain part. That there are Native people here to help us tell the story, that Native Americans, despite a very complex and difficult history, survived to be able to teach future generations their languages and their culture. And I think that was a very important piece to get across in these films.
Power is everywhere. It lives in everything. It might be known through a word or come in the shape of an animal. We all have power, but some tap into different rooms. Power speaks to those who